morning, everybody. Can you hear me? Welcome to today's meeting of the Local Pension Board. As usual, this meeting is being broadcast live to the public. For those not able to watch live, the webcast will be recorded and made available for viewing on the County Council's website after the meeting. Today, we've received apologies from Mr. Bohm. Mr. Squires is present as substitute for Mr. Bohm. We've also received apologies from Mr. Soroya. Mr. Stewart is present as substitute for Mr. Soroya. Before we begin, can I please remind everyone to only turn on their microphones when you wish to or are invited to speak. As this is the first meeting of the council term, it would be useful for all members and officers to introduce themselves. Can I start with Councillor Cook-Kelvin online, please?
Hi, thank you, Angie. Good morning, everybody. I'm Councillor Ellie Cook-Kelvin from Leicester City Council.
Thank you. Now to my left.
Morning, everybody. Anthony Cross, retired County Council employee.
Peter Morris, Loughborough North. Thank you.
Good morning. Ruth Gilbert, employee representative. I work for Leicestershire Police.
I'm Andrew Stewart. I'm employee representative for Leicestershire County Council and the sub.
Good morning, Mr. Squires, County Councillor for the Valley and Cabinet Member for Health.
Good morning, I'm Ian Howe, I'm the Pensions Manager.
Morning, I'm Bulesh Katra, officer, usually working on the Pension Committee, but paper today on Pension Board.
Morning, I'm Neeru Patel, Audit Manager for Leicestershire County Council.
Morning, Stuart Wells, Pension Section, Leicestershire County Council.
First agenda item today is appointment of chairman. Could I please ask for nominations and seconding of chairman appointees?
Yes, I nominate Manjit Soroya.
I'm happy to second that.
Are there any other nominations? As there is only one nomination, can I have a show of hands, please? Thank you, that's unanimous. Now we move on to appointment of vice chair. Are there any nominations for vice chair?
Yes, I'm happy to do that.
You want to stand as vice chair?
Yes, I'm happy to do that.
Can I just confirm that you will be replacing Mr. Bohm on the committee? I think we'll
probably, yes, it's a good point. Actually, it's probably worth speaking to him.
I think we'll
check.
We'll postpone that agenda item until the next meeting. Thank you. As Mr. Soroya isn't present at the meeting today, I need to ask somebody to chair the meeting for me. Can I have a volunteer?
I'll do it, if that helps.
Thank you, Anthony. I'll pass over to you now then.
Thank you. Good morning again, everybody. So next item is item 3, minutes of the meeting held on the 5th of February. I certainly was there, so I'm happy to move them as an accurate record. Can that be seconded, please?
Councillor Cook-Kelvin, you have a question?
I apologise, it's not about the minutes of the previous meeting. I just put in the chat box and I thought it prudent before we start the substantive agenda that I say that I had to leave at 11 o'clock. I do apologise.
Just before we leave item 3, if we assume they're all agreed, I'd like to put on record our thanks to the previous chair of the meeting, which was Councillor Mrs. Page. we'll move to item 4, question time. I can confirm there have been no questions received. Move on to item 5, to advise of any other items which the chair has decided to take as urgent. There are none. Item 6, can I now ask members to declare any interests in respect of items they may have on the agenda? None, thank you. Item 7 then, first substantive report on today's agenda is the Pension Fund Valuation 2025, Assumptions and Employee Risk. This is at pages 9 to 40 of the agenda pack. I'll ask Ian Howe, Pension Manager, to introduce this report. Also with Ian is Tom Hoare from Hyman's Robinson, who has joined us online. Ian.
Thank you, Anthony, and thank you for standing in as chair. Thank you, much appreciated. So the first item today is the assumptions and employer risk. So that's the reason we had the training in advance of this, because we appreciate for the board, you probably only see this once every 3 years because the valuation cycle is 3 yearly. So we do appreciate that this is quite sort of under the bonnet sort of kind of calculations in terms of the valuation. So just to sort of set the scene, the last valuation was the 31st of March 2022, as Tom and Richard have already said, and the next valuation is the 31st of March 25. So that's the one we're currently in at the moment, and that sets the employer contributions from April next year. So we have a year to work through the valuation, and then that sets the employer contribution rates from April 2026. I wasn't going to dwell on the detail in the report, given the training and the appendix, other than just to sort of pick out the key elements that we've talked about already. So the main one being the discount rate. As we heard earlier in the training, at the 2022 valuation, we had a 75% prudence rate, and we're proposing to increase that up to 80% because of uncertainty. The 80% prudence generates a 6% per annum discount rate, which we're comfortable with. We think that's a reasonable rate. That gives an estimated fund value of 146%. So it still shows that we're still a very well-funded scheme. You may recall, for those members who've been with us for more than 3 years, at the last valuation, we were, I think it was 105% funded from memory, there or thereabouts. Yeah, 105, 106, something of that region. So you can see an increase to 146 is a significant increase in the 3 years. And that generates an 18.1% primary contribution rate for the employers for new benefits. The CPI inflation, as Tom and Richard have already said, we're happy to retain the 0.2% buffer. Again, that's really to protect us from uncertainty. Inflation has done all sorts of things in the last 3 years. Since the last valuation, it reached 10.1% in 2023, fell to 6.7% in 2024. So you can see the uncertainty of inflation. So we still want to retain that 0.2% buffer. We think there's sense in doing so. Salary increases, again, we don't propose making any changes. We want to use the CPI plus 0.5, which is the same as we used. The 0.5 was the same rate as we used as the increase at the 2022. Salary increases is an interesting one because as the scheme has developed, for those of you who've been in the scheme for a long time, you may recall that benefits used to be based on final salary. And then in 2014, it moved to career average. So the benefits linked to final salary have naturally reduced because as those people have got older, they've retired. So there's less people with final salary benefits now. So approximately 35% have still got pre-14 benefits. So you can see why that salary assumption is becoming less key anyway. Longevity, as Tom and Richard have already mentioned, we propose to use the default longevity, which effectively means we're comfortable that longevity isn't suddenly rising or suddenly decreasing. It's just maintaining that expected position as we had earlier discussed in the training. There are other assumptions which are in point 38 in the report. They are all linked to the Club Vita information. So what we do is we work with Club Vita and they work out a number of assumptions based on our individual data for Leicestershire. So this isn't done at national level, this is done on our own data. So deaths in service, dependent benefits, and commutation, 50-50 take-up, etc. The next key stage for the valuation, because as you're aware, there's sort of a year to work through this, is to then move on to the funding strategy statement, the FSS, and the investment strategy statement, the ISS. So we'll be bringing reviews of those back to the September meeting. And we've started some work on that, as Tom and Richard alluded to, and we'll be working through that. For that, then there's always a consultation with the employers. So employers who are in the scheme and have been for years, people like Ruth representing police, will be aware that we then liaise with the employers on those two documents as part of the valuation. The timeline is detailed in point 45. I won't sort of dwell on that, but that shows you the next stages to work through. The other work we have been doing since the last meeting is an employer risk, and that's point sort of 49 in the report. So what we've done is we've categorized the different employer groups and we've assessed their risk rating from a pension fund perspective. And you can see those they're detailed in the table. Stabilised employers, councils, police, fire, categorising as low risk because they're tax raising bodies, all the way up to the highest risk group, which are the universities. The two universities present the highest risk at the moment. They've got no employer DFE guarantor, so they are currently the riskiest group, but we're working with them. We understand the financial pressure on the university sector, so we're working through that with those individual employers. The recommendations in the report are in point 50. We're recommending that the board notes the valuation assumptions and the employer risk and considers whether it wishes to make any comments that will go to the local pensions committee on Friday. Committee on Friday will then approve these assumptions. So that's all I had to say, but obviously happy to take any questions.
Yes, thank you, Ian. Any questions to Ian?
I just wanted to know what the total benefit rate was, because it mentioned in the training ahead of this that it was 5.5 billion. It's just understanding where were we in 2022 and where are we now?
Sure. I think we're at about 6.7, 6.8. Can I hand over to Bhulesh on the actual fund value number? Is that okay?
Yeah, if you're after the actual fund value, the fund is valued at 6.7 billion, but I suspect you're asking something else.
It's to understand what's the difference between where we were when we previously evaluated in 2022 and where are we now. So you've answered part of my question to know where we're at this point. Where were we in 2022?
Okay, so it's a bit more complicated than just the fund value. So what you want is two sets of numbers. You want the fund value and you want the liabilities as well back in 2022. I don't have them top of my mind, but I wonder is Tom still on, or is he? Richard's still on. I wonder if Richard may have it at hand. If he hasn't, we can get some numbers back to you.
Richard, do you have that information to hand?
Yeah, I'm frantically looking through the paper to see. It's not in that particular paper, I don't think. But we mentioned in the training, I think Tom covered that bit about the 146. But you mentioned it a minute ago, Ian, as well, 146%. So if you take the asset value that Bhulesh mentioned there, 6.5? Did you say, Bhulesh?
At March 31st, 2025, 6.7.
6.7. So that's 45% higher than 6.7. So the liability value, he says, trying to do the math really quickly, I'm going to put it's something like 4.5 to 5 billion. I got that right? 5.4. It's maybe slightly lower than 5 billion. I don't have the exact number. Apologies. We can send that on. So that's an estimated funding level, but the liability value is quite a bit lower currently based on that set of assumptions. Currently, than it was at 2022. And I think you mentioned, Ian, 106% from memory.
I think it was
So
105, 106 in
105.
2002.
Yes,
and it's
so-
up to 146 based on the 80% prudence.
Yeah.
So we can probably work this backwards, Andrew, and come back to you if that's the easiest way to do it, to be truthful.
Yes, that would be brilliant. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay then, so thanks very much for the report, and I'm happy to agree the recommendation. So the recommendation is at page 16 of the agenda, in that the board is recommended to note the valuation assumptions and employ a risk, and members' comments will be forwarded to the local pension committee. Can I take the report as being duly noted, please? That agreed? Thank you. Next item is item 8, which is the Pensions Fund Administration Report, January to March 2025, quarter 4. You'll find this at pages 41 to 62 of the agenda pack, and Stuart Wells is going to present the report to you. Stuart.
Thank you, Chair. Morning, everyone. So this is a report that I bring to each board meeting. It's to inform the board of the main administrative actions over the last quarter. So this is in respect of January to March 2025, and it covers governance areas, it covers administration of the fund, and also the performance against key performance indicators. So we'll start with the performance of the section. So the results for the quarter are in Appendix A, and the results for the full year are available in Appendix B. The performance levels for the full year are all lower than the previous year, and this is largely due to the impact that the McLeod remedy had on the casework. The retirements and deaths in particular were significantly affected by the McLeod remedy, whilst officers adapted to dealing with the extra layer of complexity that was caused by the remedy. So just a quick recap on the McLeod remedy. So this was introduced in October 2023 following an age discrimination court case, and the remedy rectifies the discriminatory treatment that affected the younger members of the scheme when the government introduced changes to the public sector schemes in 2014 and 2015. So in essence, at that point, they introduced protections for older members so that they wouldn't be any worse off as a result of the scheme changes. So this was challenged, taken to court, and found to be discriminatory. In addition to McLeod, system changes were introduced in October 23 to the pensioner payroll database that initially caused some complications when transferring figures from the administration element of the system to the payroll system, and this change impacted on administration for a significant period of time. A further update to the system has rectified that largely. And in addition to that, the impact of the McLeod remedy has now mainly been absorbed for our business as usual cases. So going forward, KPI figures are starting to return to the pre-McLeod levels, and the figures shown in Appendix A tend to reflect this when compared to the figures for the whole year. Just to note as well that officers are currently reviewing the way that performance is measured and reported on, and this may result in some changes to future reports that I bring to the board. In general, workloads have remained steady. Good progress has been made with deferred benefits, so that's the calculation of benefits for employees that leave the scheme but aren't due to take their pension just yet. And the outstanding number of cases continues to fall. Transfers are a little higher than we would like, but we've got plans in place to target these over the next quarter and bring those down. Moving on to governance, in the fourth quarter, there was no new internal dispute resolution stage 2 cases brought to our attention. There are currently 3 historic transfer cases with the Pension Ombudsman relating back many years. One of those cases has now been concluded, with the Ombudsman deciding to discontinue any further investigation, leaving just 2 outstanding, and the Ombudsman has contacted officers recently for more information, which has been provided, and a decision is awaited on those. No breaches to report. Happy to report in quarter 4, and in respect of audit reports, 1 new internal audit report was received, which related to the pension dashboard programme, which we'll come on to later in the meeting. And the objective of the audit was to establish whether the fund was on track in preparation for the launch of the dashboard programme. So substantial assurance was given, and 3 recommendations were made, and they've been acted on. Right, just to cut to the information with regards to the pension website. So our officers are currently working on 2 new pension websites. It's not something that we would have chosen to do, but the existing site has reached its end of life, and our suppliers are working on a replacement for us that covers the online facility that is available to members. In the meantime, we're also working on a general pensions website for our members that covers the areas that isn't covered in the online facility website. And I've got a couple of timelines available in the report for you to peruse. Both are due to be completed ahead of the end of the year, by the end of November. So that will be a couple of months ahead of when the website is due to reach end of life at the end of January 2026. Right, so I normally talk about McLeod again, I'm afraid. At this point, it's a permanent item in this report. So we've just touched on a little bit what McLeod is. When the changes were introduced following the ruling, these took effect, these kicked in from October 2023, but the rules were also backdated to 2014. So a significant amount of preparatory work has been done to ensure that we were able to deal with McLeod. Unfortunately, this involved a lot of manual work and was extremely time consuming, and this has impacted enormously on the section. As I say, we are now starting to absorb most of it, but there's been a lot of work been done to get to this point. So at the moment, we deal with the McLeod remedy on all business as usual cases as they come along. There was also a requirement to deal with the historic cases going back to April 14, and there is a requirement for those to be completed by the 31st of August 2025. However, there is scope for this to be extended to 31st of August 2026, and that's subject to approval by the Pensions Committee. Because of the amount of resource that it's taken to get to this point, there is still much work to do on the historic cases, and these will not be completed by the 31st of August 2025, and we will therefore be seeking approval from the Pensions Committee to extend the deadline to the 31st of August 2026, being the maximum extension period that is possible. I also wanted to mention that there is also a statutory deadline approaching for the production of annual pension statements. So this is nothing new. These have been sent out for many years, but for this year, for the first time, this information in respect of the McLeod remedy will be included within those statements. We're currently working on this, and we expect to meet this requirement. So there's a breakdown again of where we are in terms of McLeod work within the report, and a further update will be provided at the next board meeting. I want to touch on year end. So this is the annual exercise where we bring records up to date and we prepare for the production of the benefit statements that are due on the 31st of August. So this is well underway now and on track, and we expect to meet the deadline for the production of statements on the 31st of August. And once again, there's a summary of where we are contained within the report. Just wanted to touch upon a couple of areas where changes are pending. There's an access and fairness consultation that was launched by MHCLG on changes to the LGPS in England and Wales. So the proposed changes are intended to improve fairness in and access to the LGPS and include addressing inequalities with regards to survivor pensions and death grants, and generally looking to address the gender pension gap in the LGPS. And these areas do have the potential to be quite resource heavy in terms of implementation. There are proposals to address the changes to survivor pensions and death grants and make those changes retrospective. So we are expecting this to have a significant impact going forward. The consultation closes on the 7th of August, and the pensions manager is currently preparing a reply to that consultation on behalf of the Leicestershire Fund, and I know that that's been drafted, so we'll be just working through that. The other area for change is the Fit for the Future consultation. So 29th of May, the government produced its response to the LGPS Fit for the Future consultation, and the response confirms that the core proposals included in the consultation will be taken forward. So the proposals are listed within the report. So we're currently working through each of those points, and we will present an update at a future board meeting with regards to that consultation. Another area in the report that's a permanent item, we talk about employer risk, and where there are outstanding admission agreements or bonds. These are reported to the board each quarter. So these are generally where an area of work has been taken on by a private organisation. Members are still entitled to be part of the LGPS scheme, so we have to bring these private organisations into the scheme, but we have to make sure that bonds and guarantees are in place, so that there's no impact in terms of the fund should anything go wrong with these organisations. And we've currently got three areas at the moment, three employers at the moment where this is ongoing, and we're well on the way to getting that concluded, and they're all listed here. Right. Okay, there wasn't anything I was going to touch upon, but happy to take any questions.
Thanks very much, Stuart. So are there any questions on that very comprehensive report? Mrs. Gilbert?
Just a couple of comments. It's good to see the improvement in the performance indicators, from a member perspective, that performance of the unit is coming back to where it was pre-Remedy, and I do appreciate the amount of work that Remedy, takes. In terms of questions, I know you said that you were reviewing the KPIs. Would it be possible to include, maybe as a memorandum one, the length of time between somebody's retirement date and them actually receiving their commutation payment? Because I know at the moment you measure from when you've received all the paperwork, but I'd be interested just to know what the time is between sort of retirement date and payment. That's possible.
Yeah, we'll look at that, Ruth, and we'll report back. I'm sure that's something that we can include. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And then my other question was in relation to the new member website. So I know as a scheme you've done an awful lot to try and encourage, uptake in terms of members using the online service. So will the log-on details and credentials of people that are currently sort of registered with the current website, will they transition the new member site, or will people have to go through a whole process of registering and logging, setting their passwords and logins again?
Yeah, it won't be a whole new process. They'll be able to go in with their new usernames. I think they might need to change their passwords just as a result of that, but essentially it will be largely cut down from what a brand new member would have to go through. So the intention is that it should be pretty smooth. It's that the new website is being designed by the makers of the old website, so that information is there. So it should be a smooth path for existing registered members.
Yeah, that's good to hear, because I just didn't want you to lose the all the effort that you've put in to get members to use it by having the new website. But it sounds as though it'd be fairly straightforward in terms of the transition.
That's right, yeah, and we will be having another sort of launch of it as well, encouraging people that aren't already registered to have a look and register.
Thank you, Mr. Stewart.
Were there any KPIs proposed around ill health retirement? Because that's often we have to act at speed as an employer, and just understanding from your perspective.
The number of ill health retirements that we have is relatively small. It wasn't an area that we're actively looking at the moment, Andrew. But I'll take that away and we'll discuss that and see if we can come up with anything meaningful. I'd just be concerned that if we were only reporting on four ill health retirements in a quarter, that they could be skewed quite considerably.
I take the point. It's just understanding whether or not ill health retirement is increasing or decreasing, just to understand whether there's anything as people get older and stay in employment longer, whether or not there's any trends around ill health retirement. That's what I'm just looking to understand.
Oh, okay. So it's not just about the performance, but also the numbers involved.
Yeah.
Okay. Understood. Yeah, we'll take that away. Can I just come on that point as well? I think I'll have to look back, but I think in the annual reports, Andrew, looking back, it shows the number of ill health retirements as well. So we could look back through annual reports, I think, to give us an indication of the trends. So I think we've got.
I think that would be useful to understand whether that, because that as a board member, I'd be wanting to see whether there's any positive or negative trends, sure. And that it's not just that we're measuring the performance of the pension scheme. Sure. It's just understanding whether there is any trends that we need to be addressing as employers.
Okay, thanks. Take your point and Ruth, thank you for both of those. Yeah, thanks.
There are no more questions. Just like to comment on the fact that the report shows how busy the pensions section are. And I think we're very grateful as a board for all the hard work that's being done by staff back at base. So please pass on their thanks to them. And if there are no more questions, the recommendations are at page 55 of the agenda. In that the board is recommended to consider the report, and any comments we've had, and we've had a couple, will be forwarded to the local pension committee. Is that agreed? Thank you. We're also being invited to consider the proposed extension of the McLeod deadline ahead of the local pension committee meeting again. Is that agreed? It is. Thank you. Next item then is item 9, additional voluntary contributions. This is at pages 63 to 114 of the report. And Ian, I gather you're introducing this report, and you're joined by Alistair Hogg from the Prudential. Welcome, Alistair. Ian.
Thank you, Anthony. Yes, so I am online. You'll see Alistair Hogg has joined us. He's the head of corporate pensions at Prudential. So we're very pleased to have Alistair with us. Alistair, thank you for joining us. So the report is to explain that we as just to kind of give you a bit of a sort of a history of AVCs for those members who are new particularly. So the LGPS is the statutory scheme, but within the regulations we also have to offer an additional voluntary contribution scheme as well, an ABC, and you use a third party for the ABC, and this is purely voluntary. It's for those members that wish to pay it, and we've used the Prudential and have done I think since about 1996. So what we've done is we went through and had a formal tender to review the AVC options available, and this is the report to introduce that back to yourselves. So pleased to say the Prudential were the successful bidder, and so therefore remain as our AVC provider, which we're pleased. What we're also doing is we've used the opportunity to work with the Prudential on a number of items actually, and we're still working through that at the moment. And we managed to reduce the annual management charge as part of this piece of work. So that means that the current AVC payers will have more of their money going into their AVC pot, which is great. So therefore investing more money into their own future. And also the sort of greater emphasis on salary sacrifice, shared cost AVCs. This is something that Prudential are happy to support with and work with us on. So employers can choose to use a third party if they so choose, but they don't have to. We can do this directly with the Prudential if we want to. And that's an option to allow employers to effectively reduce increase their savings by reducing their costs through the national insurance. It's an NI sort of savings scheme for employers. That's called a shared cost AVC. I know we've got a few employers that do this already, and the Prudential are happy to work with us on expanding that out for those employers that want to do that. We are also using the opportunity to increase the fund options for our AVC payers. We are proposing to increase the fund to include a new one, which is the HSBC Islamic Global Equity Index, which is a new option that's available. It's a passive fund, and that will allow those people that wish to do that to pay into that AVC option as well. So it's just to increase the diversity options available to our scheme members. As part of the contract with the Prudential, we're working on a number of other things like service standards and communications. We've worked with the Prudential for many years, as I say, so this just enforces and increases what we're already doing with the Prudential. The other item that we're also working on is the pensions dashboard. So that's the information where we have to submit data to the national dashboard where members can go in and view all their pensions information in one place. We're working on the single source route, which means we'll also be including the AVC data from the Prudential as part of that. So that's another piece of work that's ongoing. I'm happy to take any questions, and obviously Alistair is online as well. So if I may, I'm going to offer Alistair the opportunity to talk first, and then feel free to ask any questions of myself or Alistair directly. So Alistair, over to you. Thank you for your patience.
Thanks very much, Ian, and thanks very much for the invitation to be here today. As Ian was saying, there's been a relationship between the Pru and Leicestershire since the 1990s, and we're really delighted to continue as a partner of the pension scheme. We do maintain a really strong relationship with the pensions team, and it's therefore a real pleasure then to meet all of you virtually at this, I think, a really important moment in our relationship. Over the last few years, as board members will be aware, the pensions landscape has been evolving. It continues to evolve with the pensions bill recently and the roadmap that the pensions minister has published. So a lot of change ahead in this area. But at the same time, Pru has continued to evolve as well. But irrespective of that, we remain committed both to you and to your members, and we will be continuing to develop our capability for the service of your colleagues, actually. And that's very much being seen in the areas of investment and particularly in communications. Recently, we've upgraded some of the multi-asset investment options that members have got available to them. This is very much in line with the direction of government policy, but it's involving increasing the diversity that we have in the funds that we offer, particularly including things like things called real assets, which is more property type options, infrastructure type investments as well, that are very, very good for diversifying risk for members. And ultimately, we expect them to improve the long-term returns of the investment funds. So very much in the interests of members there. In the last couple of years, we've upgraded significantly the education and information campaigns that we are sending out to members of the pension schemes that we work with. We're doing this 5 or 6 times a year, very much an educational message, but it's getting really, really strong responses from members. So just to give you a couple of statistics, because no pensions meeting is complete without statistics, we get about a 40% open rate on an email that we send to members. And of that, 10% of those people, 10% of the total, then click through to our website, which for an email distribution approach, that's really, really high. And it's showing us one thing, that members really, really want this information, as stuff about investment, about tax, about retirement options, but it's all being very well received. So we will continue to do that and to support your members with that. And we continue to work and support with the pension fund and employers to encourage the adoption of AVCs as well. So in fact, just yesterday, sent across to offices the new draft flyer for members if they want to then pay AVCs as well. So again, we're working with the pensions team just to make sure that that is appropriate and to work on how we're going to distribute that as well. And then finally, we're working on with employers, in particular with payrolls, to optimize the processes through which contributions are sent through to us. We're doing this, yes, with Leicestershire. Actually, we're doing it with all of our local government pension scheme clients across the country as well, just to make sure that that process works really, really well, because administratively, if we get the contribution processes right, then everything else works much more efficiently as well. So that's a huge focus for our team. But as I said at the beginning of my comments, we're delighted to be continuing to work with the fund and looking forward to developing our relationship further. So thanks very much for your time.
Thank you, Alistair. Any questions there for Alistair or Ian? You're both going to get off on this one, chaps. So if there are no questions, I'm happy to read the recommendation, which is to page 68 of the agenda, in that the board is recommended to note the report, and any comments we have, which at the moment there are none, will be forwarded to the local pension committee. Is that agreed? Thank you.
Agenda item 11 next, while we wait for LGPS Central.
So, agenda item 11, this is the internal audit arrangements, including internal audit work conducted during 24-25 and the internal audit plan for the coming year 25-26 from the Director of Corporate Resources, and Neeru Patel, Audit Manager, is going to present the report. Morning, Neeru.
Morning, thank you, Chair. Firstly, if I can just introduce Neil Jones, Head of Audit and Insurance. He's joining me today. So I present this report annually, and I just wanted to explain the internal audit arrangements for the pension fund, as well as to provide an annual progress report on the work completed, as well as to present the plan for this financial year. And I'll also explain the new global internal audit standards So starting off with the background section of the report, so paragraphs 2 to 5, that explains the requirements for effective governance and the proper administration of financial affairs, including the need to have a continuous internal audit function. So this board has got responsibility for receiving plans and results of the internal audit activity. The next section, paragraph 6 to 14, explains how the team works to internal audit standards, how it plans audits and reports findings and recommendations. It also explains the new global internal audit standards that were introduced in January this year. Internal audit teams in the public sector were not required to actually work to these new standards until April this year, because there were some additional requirements that needed to be made specifically for the UK public sector. There's several new standards to review and implement, and it will take some time for us to fully conform. So Head of Audit is currently working on a gap analysis and creating a plan of actions to address any shortfalls. Paragraph 15 goes on to summarise the work completed in the last financial year, and this is outlined in Appendix 1, which is on pages 147 and 148. I'm pleased to report an overall positive position with no high importance recommendations. All final reports are shared with the external auditor to inform their risk assessment, their audit of the fund's accounts. Paragraph 16 and 17 throws some light on the biennial National Fraud Initiative, which is a counter-fraud data matching exercise coordinated by the Cabinet Office. Data was uploaded back in October 24 with reports released in January this year. From that exercise, 9 cases were identified where payments had been continued to made to deceased pensioners, and the pension section have taken action to recover those overpayments. Paragraph 18 goes on to explain that the pension service also subscribes to a 6-monthly NFI mortality screening service, and this checks pension records against DWP's deceased persons database. This exercise allows the service to become aware of deaths at a much earlier stage in the process. The last exercise was undertaken in June 24 and identified a further 9 cases. From those 9 cases, invoices were issued for 2 of the cases and amounts were written off for a further 2. The overpayment was recovered from the spouse's entitlement for a further case, and the remaining 4 cases continue to be pursued by the pension service. The next exercise is due to be undertaken this month. Paragraph 19 explains the role of internal audit in reviewing and commenting on updates to the risk register, which is the responsibility of the pensions manager. Internal audit place reliance on the risk register as part of the annual planning process. Moving on to paragraphs 20 to 24. Now, this gives some background on the collaborative work with partner fund internal auditors from other councils that own LGPS Central. An internal audit working group was formed with representation from internal audit sections from each of the administering authorities, so 80 in total. The first 4-year plan of audits were allocated on a rota basis and covered 2018-19 to 2022-23, and that's now been completed. So we've now got a revised 4-year audit plan, which started from 23-24, and that's been agreed. The latest cyclical programme of audits is shown in Appendix 3, which is on pages 151 and 152. So you'll notice that Leicestershire being allocated the governance audit for 24-25. That's now been completed and a draft report's been issued to the company for comment. Paragraphs 25 to 28 give some background on the difficulty we had in obtaining what we call a Type 2 control report, which is an assurance report. So for the year ended December 22, this wasn't actually available until January 24 and was qualified. So because of the delays with this, LGPS Central asked Section 151 officers and external auditors for partner organisations to agree an alternative approach, which was a Type 1 report, which is much shorter and at a certain point in time, along with other forms of assurance. So Grant Thornton, the external auditors for Leicestershire, opted for a Type 2 report, which is the fuller report that covers a longer period. And that was because it would alleviate the need for them to undertake significant extra work and the fund incurring the additional cost. Despite all this, LGPS Central decided to go for the Type 1 along with other forms of assurance. So this was reviewed last year, but a Type 2 is expected for the year ending March 25, and it should be available early July for us to review. Moving on, the table on page 146 gives a summary of performance during the year. So 6 audits were completed, with 2 audits started but carried forward into the new year, and 1 was deferred into this financial year. The recharge for the fund for this work was just over £31,000. Moving on, Appendix 2 on pages 149 and 150 outlines the planned audit work for this current financial year. Paragraphs 31 and 32 go on to explain how the plan was compiled. The cost of the planned 90 days of audit work will be in the region of £34,000. And this brings me to the end of the report. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Yes, thank you, Nero. Evidence of a lot of hard work from internal audit colleagues, which I'm sure pensions colleagues also very much appreciate. Are there any questions for Nero or Neil indeed? Okay. Recommendations at page 146 of the agenda, in that the board note the report. Can I take that, please, as the report is duly noted? Everyone's agreed with it? Thank you. So we go back to item 10, but perhaps before we do, I think Councillor Kelvin, you're leaving shortly, so to say thank you very much for your attendance this morning. And we go back to item 10. This is at pages 115 to 140. This is the LGPS Central Update Report. We're joined by external colleagues, Mr. Richard Law-Deeks, Ms. Cara Forrest, Ms. Jane Atkinson, and Mr. Trevor Castledine from LGPS Central, who can deliver a presentation, and Bulish Katra, the Senior Finance Business Partner Investments, will introduce the report. Bulish.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be relatively brief. I do know we've got a presentation from our colleagues at Central. So we've got Richard, the CEO, Cara, who's the head of clients, Jane, who is the Chief Investment Officer, and Trevor, the Chief Stakeholder Officer. So cracking on, the purpose of the report is to provide the board with an update on the outcome for the Fit for the Future consultation. We've heard briefly previously from Stuart. We'll expand a bit further. We have a slide from Central within the pack as well, which will help. And the pack is appended to the report. A bit of background, the County Council, or the fund, is an equal owner of LGPS Central. We're a 1/8 owner. We own Central alongside the Cheshire Fund, Derbyshire Fund, Nottinghamshire Fund, Shropshire, Staffordshire, West Mids and Worcestershire. Central's been in operation since the 1st of April 2018, so that's just over 7 years. And the fund currently has 3.8 billion of the 6.7 billion invested with LGPS Central, so it's about 58% of the fund. In addition to that, at the time of writing, we've got about £650 million earmarked to be invested, in addition to that 3.8 billion I just mentioned to be invested with Central also. It's split across various private market investments, private equity 90 odd million, property 50 million, private credit 430 million, and infrastructure about 120 million. So that makes up that 650 I just mentioned. Moving to point 7, the fund, as I mentioned, is a stakeholder with LGPS Central from 2 different perspectives. We're a co-owner, a shareholder, a 1/8 shareholder, but we're also a recipient of investment services. So that 3.8 billion I mentioned, and there's a lovely little graphic at point 8, which is also in the slides. So I won't explain it too much at the minute unless anybody does have a question, but we can obviously come back to it during the Central presentation. The final part here is regarding the Fit for the Future consultation. So in November, government initiated the LGPS Fit for the Future consultation. The focus was to look at how tackling fragmentation and inefficiency can unlock investment potential through asset pooling, enhanced governance, while strengthening the focus on local investment. The fund did respond to this initial consultation in January 2025. And then in May, we got the final report, the Pensions Investment Review and the Fit for the Future consultation outcome. We've got slides within the central pack which goes through the main points. Briefly though, reforming the LGPS central asset pools and mandating certain minimum standards, which includes that all administering authorities will be required to delegate investment strategy implementation and take advice from their pool. That's one of the points. Local and regional investments, funds will be required to set target ranges for local investment within their investment strategy statement, one of the other major areas. And there's some changes in governance, will include areas such as improved training, governance, and a triennial independent governance review, so once every 3 years. And another part is funds must also appoint a non-voting independent advisor for investment strategy oversight. It's not something that the fund currently has, although many other funds do. I don't have anything more to say unless there are questions for me at this point. Otherwise, I can hand over to our colleagues from Central.
Okay, thank you, Bulesh. Well, just before we do that, just to check, any questions for Bulesh at this stage? Over to you then, LGPS Central.
Would you like us to introduce ourselves first?
Yes, please.
So my name's Richard Lord-Deeks. I'm the Chief Executive Officer here at LGPS Central. I've been with the company for 1 year and about 2 weeks. I joined from Royal Mail, where I was responsible for pension investments, not parcels and letters, so don't hold that against me. Trevor, do you want to go next?
Yeah, thank you. So Trevor Castledine, the Chief Commercial Officer. So I have a bit of a legacy in the LGPS, having worked for Lancashire and LPPI, as well as an investment consultant, and now responsible for providing a link between our partner funds and our investment team, and trying to make sure that we deliver the service that is required. I'll pass on to Jane, I guess.
Hello everyone, my name's Jane Atkinson. I'm the new Chief Investment Officer. I joined in April. Previously, I was a Chief Investment Officer working for Unilever Pension Funds. I was there for 8 years. Prior to that, I was at Nestle for 6 years. And then prior to that, I spent the first decade of my career as an investment consultant, and I'm an actuary by background. Pleasure to meet you all today.
And I'll go last. My name's Clara Forrest. I'm Head of Clients here at LGPS Central. So I work with Trevor and really closely with Kat and Bulesh to kind of make everything happen behind the scenes. Similar to Jane, my background was investment consulting. I used to work for Mercer and I'm also an actuary. But yeah, thanks. I'll hand back to Richard.
Thank you. So Bulesh has given some great background there, so I won't dive into that. But on slide 15, we've got a bit more background and information. You're very, very small on our screen. So if you do want to ask questions, don't hesitate to interrupt us, and let's try and keep this conversational. So if we skip to the next slide, please. So as I mentioned, I joined a little over a year ago. Like any new CEO, I wanted to develop a new strategy. You know, we built this around strategic outcomes that we worked with our partner funds on. They were improving stakeholder relations, enhancing investment performance, demonstrating value for money, and increasing AUM. And unsurprisingly, we built this around 3 strategic initiatives, which were people, digital, and strategic partnerships. And we worked really hard with our partner funds on this new strategy. And we were collaborative, and we got unanimous approval on the budget, which was great. And I think this slide shows that we're already delivering on some of those strategic outcomes. So, for example, our flagship fund, the Global Active Equities Fund, is performing over its target, ahead of its target over 5 years, and is a top quartile fund and one of the best performing active global equity funds amongst any pool. Our assets under management, or AUM, is up to 45 billion from 30 billion when I started. And we're in a much better position with our stakeholders. So I think we've got a really good relationship a year in with our partner funds. We're also on government's radar, and I'll come on to that now. But we went from being we were cited in the recent consultation that I'm going to talk about as an example of best practice. So at the same time as I've been developing the strategy that I've been talking about, we've had a general election, a new government, and there's no surprises really that they've focused on the LGPS with their pensions review, and they've launched something called Fit for the Future that my colleague Trevor's going to talk about a little bit. But their aim here is to kind of boost growth and investment in the UK. They've been looking at the Canadian and Australian models for pension funds, and their aim is really to accelerate pooling, and as Bullish has mentioned, widen the kind of services that pool delivers to include advice, implementation, and local investment. And that business strategy that we developed and that I referred to earlier was a really good opportunity for us to practice putting a plan together, because the government asked us to put a plan together on how we would transition to these new services. So we worked with our partner funds on that plan and submitted it to government, and really pleased to say that we got some really good feedback from government on the plan. And this wasn't the case for all the 8 pools that exist in the UK. 2 of them were asked to wind up, so it feels like we're in a really good place. We're one of 3 pools that are expected to take on partner funds from those 2 new pools. And again, my colleague Trevor will touch on that a little bit. So if we jump to the next slide, I'll just talk a little bit, if I may, about what I think makes LGPS Central special. So we're future-proof. So as I've mentioned, we do a lot of things already that the government wants. We've got parts of the portfolio that are managed internally. We've got some experience in local investment, and the government has this ambition for pools to work with strategic authorities when they're set up, and that's very different across the UK. But we're lucky in the central region that we've got the West Midlands and East Midlands combined authorities, and we've got some experience of working with them. The second point is diversity. So we've got 8 owners or shareholders and clients, as Bullish has mentioned, and we've got some of the biggest and smallest funds in the LGPS, but we've also got a real range of governance. So we've got some, lots of different models, and we're very adept at working with different models of governance. Resilience. So as a pool, I'm not the first CEO. We've had change in management. We're about to change our chair. We've been through change. Not all pools have done that, so I think that's a real strength of ours. Practical progress. So I mentioned we do internal management. We also work with strategic partners. The business strategy that we came up with and the transition plan was all about being practical. So I think that's a key strength. And the last point, and as Trevor mentioned this in his introduction, I also started my career in the LGPS. A lot of my senior leadership team and a lot of people in the business have been on the fund side of the table. So, the LGPS is very much in our DNA. So I've rattled through that. I'll pause for any questions, and if not, I'll hand over to my colleague, Jane.
Yes, any questions at this stage for Richard? If not, back to you then, Richard.
Sorry, Cara, not Jane. Cara's going to talk a little bit about the governance.
Just a really quick update on the governance, as you've heard several times. So the beauty for Leicestershire is that you are not only our clients, but you're also our shareholders. So we just wanted to touch base a little bit on that and set out some of the governance and touch points that we have with all of our partner funds. It might be a little bit hard to see, I appreciate, on your slides, so hopefully you can see this later, but there's two real main collective forums to focus on. One is the shareholder forum, where we discuss company matters, and the general meetings take place. There's a forward plan in place to make sure that everything is debated in advance and discussed, and it gives everybody a chance to be on the same page regarding those company matters. And then the other is the joint committee, which looks at things from an investor point of view, so covers things like investment performance, how we're monitoring our funds, what developments we're making in terms of the fund space, if there's anything new coming up in the future in the pipeline, and responsible investment or stewardship also plays a part there. So they're the kind of two higher level collective meetings, and then underneath that we work really closely with the officers at each of our partner funds through the practitioners advisory forum. And part of that, underneath that, you've got various working groups. So you can see there's just several touch points at all different levels across the pool, which gives you that kind of greater insight and oversight of what we're doing here at LGPS Central. So a whistle-stop tour of the governance, and happy to take any questions, but otherwise I'll hand over to, I think, Jane to cover our investment approach.
Thank you, Cara. Just any questions then on that? If not, over to you, Jane, please.
Thank you very much. I'm going to take us through the investment beliefs, which form the basis of how we therefore go on and approach our investing. So our first belief is around alignment of interests, and this is about aligning the pooled fund offering that we provide with what our partner funds want and need. And so we have a range of different products which we provide, and they are updated and evolved in accordance with our partner funds' needs. And if you were to ask me which one out of these 7 beliefs are the most important, I would say this is the most important belief, because we really are here for our partner funds, and therefore we want to make sure that we are doing everything we can to align ourselves with our partner funds. Our second belief is around a long-term focus. So not only is this in relation to the asset classes themselves, but also in relation to the third parties that we have relationships with. So let me give you an example. When we enter into a relationship with an investment manager, for example, we are doing that with the intention of that being a long-term relationship. We don't want to suddenly hire a manager and then suddenly remove them thereafter. So we do genuinely want that long-term focus when it comes to hiring, and we would like to learn from them. Likewise, we hope that they would learn from us too. The next belief is around diversification. So this is not only in relation to diversification of asset classes, but it also covers diversification of how we access investments. So, for example, on the private market side, and particularly private equity, we would like to access, and we do provide access to different private equity investments through different routes. So we really would like to ensure that going forwards we continue to allow that different access to the different asset classes that we offer. Our fourth belief is in relation to risk management. So we do have a very structured and rigid approach to risk management. So we look at the investments from all sorts of angles in relation to risk. And therefore, we also are aware, and I always say, whatever risk approach one has, we always have to have an overlay of flexibility to react to any evolving, emerging situation, because it's impossible to predict all risk events in advance, and therefore we must make sure the governance is in place to be able to react when necessary, and COVID would have been an example of that, where one needs to react to make sure that the investments are safe. The fifth belief is in relation to responsible investments, and this is very much looked at from both an upside and a downside risk lens. So let me explain. So on the upside, there are opportunities in the marketplace in relation to responsible investment, and we want to be able to capture those opportunities. But likewise, there are some risks, for example, that responsible investment can pose. So we also want to make sure that we are aware of those downside risks and how they may affect companies, for example, in the investments that we invest in. The sixth belief is around the value of active and passive. You know, a lot of our partner funds have beliefs in relation to active and passive management. So we offer both, particularly on our equity range. We do offer the ability to invest either or both in relation to the lineup of investments. And then finally, we have innovation and adaptability. So we really want to make sure that we continue to be innovative. We want to be able to capture the investments that look attractive and be able to take those under our wing. Likewise, we need to be adaptable. So we really would like to make sure that, you know, we can adapt our fund range to, as I said earlier, to what our partner funds want and require. So I've rattled through our 7 beliefs. I'll pause there if anyone has any questions.
Anyone want to take up that kind offer? Looks like the answer is no. Oh, sorry, Bhulesh.
Hi, Jane. Can you, for the benefit of the board, could you explain what you mean by active and passive strategies, please?
Sure. I'll start with passive first. So with a passive strategy, one would, and let's take equities, there'll be a benchmark of different companies, and there'll be a set percentage of how much the benchmark will invest in particular companies. So these are household names that you will recognise, for example, how much to invest in Tesco, for example. And so on a passive approach, the fund manager would hold the exact percentage of the benchmark, and they would not be making any what we call active decisions to underweight or overweight that particular stock or company. They will hold exactly what it says in the benchmark. Active, on the other hand, is where a fund manager would actually decide they prefer one company over another, and therefore if they prefer one particular company, they would hold more money within that particular company. And so with active management, sometimes you see that there's a lot fewer stocks that are held because a manager may have conviction in a handful of names, for example, and therefore they would want to invest in those names and not be exposed necessarily to some of the underlying companies that they don't like. Thank you, Bhulesh. Does that answer the question?
Yes, thanks, Jane.
Were there any other questions before I move on?
Yes, Mrs. Gilbert.
Thank you. Who sets the benchmark then for the passive?
So the benchmark, we use different benchmarks internally. These are typically household names. So, for example, FTSE we use, and that they would we would work with them to set the benchmark for a particular fund, for example. There are lots of benchmark providers out there. So FTSE MSCI is another one, for example. So we can choose which benchmark we think is appropriate for a particular fund. Are there any other questions?
I was going to say, I think we're done at this end.
Okay, thank you. So I was going to talk through the manager monitoring process, and ultimately I want to sort of relay the message that there's a lot of manager meetings, and let me explain why. So when we invest with a manager, I mentioned earlier that we do that with a long-term focus in mind. And when we first invest with a manager, they normally have a great process, they have a good team that are running the money, and they normally have had a great performance in the past. However, things do change, and we need to make sure that we are updated and aware of what is going on at that manager. So, for example, if the fund manager leaves or his or her team leave, that would trigger a review of the particular fund. So we really need to test to make sure that we are clear as to whether or not the team, for example, is happy. Are they in place for the long term? Do they have long-term benefits that hold them to the company? And what is the succession planning should anyone leave? And so we would have regular meetings with the team, for example, to assess that. And so we do assess them on a number of criteria, particularly around, as I mentioned earlier, to start with, we would look at their performance, we would look at the team structure, we would look at the process that they have in place, and so on. And we would generate a rating for that particular manager. And over time, we will update that rating to make sure that it is still appropriate. In an extreme situation, we may choose to remove that manager if they are not performing how we want them to perform. Or, for example, if, as I mentioned earlier, the team has moved on, and if we're not happy with the existing team, or if their process has changed, and we're not comfortable with the process. Now, these are sort of rare events, but they do happen. So we just need to make sure that we are performing our due diligence and our regular due diligence on those managers. I'll stop there. Does anyone have any questions?
Copious head shaking. So.
Okay. Thank you. So moving on to performance. So these are the funds which you have exposure to. I'm really pleased to say that overall there's been some really great performance. And so coming in fresh, so I joined a couple of months ago, it was really great to see that particularly that first line, the Global Equity Fund, that is in our top quartile of performance versus other pooled funds out there. So we're really proud of that particular fund, and the team has done a great job putting that together. Overall, as I say, we've got good performance here over the long term. I mean, it's important to look over the long term because the markets are moving around each quarter. And so it's that longer term performance that we're really looking at. I would highlight that the fourth line down, which is the Global Multi-Asset Credit Fund, is currently under review. Whilst that performance there is lower than the benchmark, it has actually performed well in Q2, and so that will come through. But anyhow, we are reviewing the underlying makeup of that fund, so we'll report back with further progress in relation to that review. I'll move on to the next slide. This is the exposure to private market, so investments across property, private equity, infrastructure and private credit. Overall, I would say that these funds are performing well. I'm conscious that these are quite early stage investments here. So we need to be a little bit careful at this stage not to draw too many conclusions. But I'm assured by my colleagues that, whilst these funds are in their early stages, they are performing well so far. And I look to update you further on that as the years go by. These are long-term investments, so we need to look at these with a 10-year plus lens. Thank you for your time.
Thanks so much. Just on that last point, just asking sort of from the council perspective, are you happy with the trajectory that we've just seen there?
Are you talking regarding the private markets investments there? Yeah, so as Jane mentioned, these are relatively long-term investments. They're invested in what we call illiquid areas, so they're not priced daily. The returns that you see there on that third from right column, the IRR numbers, are subject to one-off costs at the start of investments, which depress returns. So, many of those investments, so direct property, for example, line number 1, it shows a 4.9% IRR. It would expect to probably get a bit more, but as you can imagine, when you buy property for the first time, you've got a big one-off cost in stamp duty, for example, which depresses returns. We've got similar kinds of costs through many of these funds. So the other private credit funds, the private equity funds have similar kinds of one-off early costs, which investments have to get through before you start seeing the real returns. So yeah, at this stage, Jane's correct. We need to look at these with a much longer time frame.
Thanks, Bullish. Any other questions? No? In that case, we're back with the slides.
Fit for the future. As Richard flagged earlier, I'll pick up Fit for the Future. Just for a little bit of additional background, I suppose, the agenda of local authority pension schemes pooling their assets together to achieve economies of scale and more resilience, I guess, has been on the government and civil service agenda since I think 2013 was when the ideas were first mooted, and certainly the first generation of pooling companies started to be established around 2015-16. So what has happened with the recent government is they've picked up, or the current government actually, after the recent election, is they've picked up that agenda and really put a turbocharger on it, I think. And on this slide are a number of requirements that the government has placed. And for the first time, I mean, they are embedding these requirements in legislation. A lot of this has been encouraged. It's been done through secondary sort of regulation and gentle encouragement. Now, I think the government is taking a harder line and a more legislative approach to promoting pooling. And so what needed to happen was that LGPS Central as a company, but importantly, together with partner funds, had to put forward a plan which was going to address some of the important needs and these new requirements that the government has imposed on pooling companies. Some of these are brand new requirements, and some of these are requirements that have sort of been soft requirements historically, but which are turning into, proper hard legislative requirements. So just running through those very quickly. Firstly, it's clear that each individual administering authority is going to remain sovereign over their investment strategy, their high-level investment strategy. But instead of using, a third-party advisor to get their principal advice, they will now need to take that advice from their pooling company. As Richard's mentioned, and as our colleagues have mentioned, a number of us have got a background in providing that advice, but we don't currently have an advisory function. So that is something that we will need to build anew and is part of our plan. The second point there is that authorities are going to be required to fully delegate implementation of investment strategy. So this means that whilst each individual pension fund can still set their own strategy, which is suitable for their own risk tolerance, their own funding level, their own individual characteristics of cash flow profile, etc. All of the responsibility for then implementing that strategy, which means manager selection, cash flow management, and other things are needing to be delegated to the pool company, and that's something which was the direction of travel, but it wasn't something that was happening 100%. Historically, it is something that now needs to be done 100% from the 1st of April next year. Again, that's something that I think we have the capability to do, but because of the increase in volume and the increase in regulatory requirements, given the size that we will get to, that will need us to build additional capability to offer the resilience and assurance that's necessary there. The third line item there is that all pools are required to be established as FCA regulated entities. Now that's something, as Richard said, we are future proof. We already tick all of those boxes, and that has been a big advantage as part of this process. 8 pools went into that process. 2 have been told that their plans didn't match the government's vision for the future, and they are currently looking for new, the member funds within those pools are currently looking for a new home. One of those new homes may be Central. And so it's very important for us that we were able to tick that box, and I think it's been a great strength. The fourth point is this requirement for all administering authorities to transfer all of their assets, including the ones that are currently not under pool management, to the management of the pool, and that has got a hard deadline again of the end of March next year. This is something that we've had to figure out how we can do that. Some assets, as Bhulesh has mentioned, might suffer significant costs if the ownership of those are transferred, such as property and what have you. So we've had to develop a process whereby we can put these under pool management without incurring unnecessary transition costs, and that will include a degree of discretionary oversight whilst assets remain in the ownership of our partner funds, but with a long-term plan to transition those into pooled vehicles. And then the fifth point, and this was another one that Richard identified here, is that there is a strong agenda to invest locally, invest in the UK, but also invest locally. And the government's vision is that pool companies will be the centre of expertise for the underwriting and management of those investments, and will need to work with each administering authority as well as regional combined authorities and local mayors to try and originate those opportunities and provide the due diligence, the independent due diligence and management of those investments over time. And that's a capability that we've got, but which needs to be bolstered as well as part of the plan. So as I've mentioned, we work together with our partner funds to put that plan in place. It's been approved by the government, and now we are in a process of implementing that. So before I move on to the next slide, are there any questions around those requirements?
Any questions at all? If I may, I just have one on the last item, item 5, and just wondering, how's this all going to shape out? Because there are some big hitter authorities represented on LGPS Central, and they clearly want to to get as much investment as they can through looking at item 5, and how's that going to be sorted out so there's a fair spread and everyone gets a fair slice, so to speak?
It's a good question. I mean, I think that the answer to that is that each individual authority is required to set out a local investment plan, and then the pool company is required to work with that authority in order to implement that plan. So yes, we have got, I mean, one of the great benefits, I guess, within Central is we have the West Midlands, which is a long-standing combined authority with a mayor that's been going for a long time, and they've actually got some good working practices that we can lean upon and learn from to spread this work out to other partner funds. But it's clearly our intention to provide an equal and fair service to each partner fund. We will need to work out the working relationships with each of those funds, and whichever, if they end up in combined authorities or they end up with mayors, work out how we learn from what we already know, but provide the appropriate resource to address their needs. I think, people can define their own local investment strategy. It can be, the government's provided guidance that means within their own area or within the broader area covered by their pool. But it's going to be up to each individual authority to set that strategy, and then for the pool to work with them to help implement it.
Yes, thank you, Richard. That's helpful. I suppose I should just express the view that in Leicestershire we're subject to review, so we may end up in a couple of years' time totally different framework in terms of the number of authorities. So there's quite a bit of interest in this one, I'm sure. Any more questions? No? Okay, back with the slides.
Thank you. So look, this final slide is just to set out really that some of the principles that we bring to bear. Culturally, we're very client-centric. We're owned by LGPS funds. We're part of the LGPS. And so whilst we haven't got a fully implementable, a fully worked out plan yet, and we need to carry on working with our partner funds and potentially some new partner funds to deliver our Fit for the Future plan, there are a number of guiding principles that we bring along with this, and I think this is really important. Firstly, we're here to provide value for money. The whole idea behind pooling is value for money. So what we want to do is we want to preserve value, not suffer unnecessary costs that aren't justified by long-term savings. I think that's important. We recognise the value of the knowledge that sits in our partner funds, their experience and the history and heritage that has come towards building these portfolios. We don't want to just come and bring even though everything has to be delegated by legislation now to pools, it doesn't mean the pools need to ride roughshod over that. It means that we need to work with our partner funds, recognising the value and the history that has been brought to those portfolio construction, and recognising that the quality of the staff that are working for those partner funds. Collaboration is really at the heart of what we do. We really had a great case study in terms of producing this Fit for the Future plan in terms of collaboration. We want to continue to deliver high standard of service, and we want to continue to take their thoughts and input into account when we develop our solutions. Importantly, as with a higher level of delegation that is imposed by this legislation, it's really important that governance continues to give assurance to our partner funds, but also enables the company to deliver across the whole group. And so we are, committed to having robust governance, and probably what the governance needs to be fit for the future, to coin that phrase again. So we need to review and enhance the governance to make sure it continues to meet partner funds' needs, as well as the government's objectives in the longer term now. And I think, again, Jane's referred to this, Richard's referred to this, and Cara, we're all about being flexible and pragmatic. There are deadlines to meet. I think we can put in place practical solutions to this that are going to meet the government's needs, but without compromising providing what we need to do for our partner funds as an FCA regulated entity and as an entity who is closely aligned with the interests of our partner funds. We only exist because you own us, and we need to make sure that we can deliver against the new requirements that are being imposed without compromising on the quality of service that you get. So I think those are the key principles. Again, if there are any questions around that, I'll be happy to answer them.
Thanks, Trevor. So yes, any questions? No? If not, perhaps just back to Richard for the last few comments.
Hopefully that's been helpful. We're very happy to meet pension boards of our partner funds and engage with you. Thank you for inviting us, and hopefully we'll speak again in the future. Also happy to take any questions. And I guess the last point is I do a kind of quarterly CEO update. I'm very happy to add members of the board if that's helpful for them to get that kind of quarterly update from me.
Would that go to pension colleagues who could then distribute it to us?
Yeah, exactly.
That's great. I should perhaps just add some of us had some very helpful training. This is all new stuff for one or two of the members of the board. I should thank the County Council's Head of Law for doing a presentation a couple of weeks ago at the training, just to explain a little bit more about what's going on with LGPS Central and the pooling, which was very, very helpful. If there are no further questions, just like to thank everyone from LGPS Central for the very helpful and thorough presentation, which I'm sure we've all appreciated. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so happy to agree the recommendation at page 118 of the agenda pack, which is recommended that the board note the report and the presentation. Is that agreed? Lovely. So we now move to item 12, which is the Pensions Dashboard Programme Report. This is at pages 153 to 174 of the agenda, and over to Stuart to present the report. Stuart, please.
Thank you, Chair. Right, so this is a report just to update the board on progress made in relation to the Pension Dashboards Programme. The aim of the Pension Dashboards Programme is to provide essentially it's an online portal that users of the portal will be able to log into and trace their pensions, their UK pensions. So it's a national exercise. It's a statutory requirement, and public sector schemes, including Leicestershire Fund, must connect to the dashboards by the 31st of October 2025. Although the overall deadline for all schemes is the 31st of October 2026. To connect to the dashboard, we require an integrated service provider that provides the link from the funds systems to the dashboards. And the system will work like a giant switchboard. So the data isn't stored permanently on the dashboard. It stays here in Leicestershire. But if a user requires if the user is found, then the ISP sends the data directly to the dashboard for that user to access. And so this is a key technical requirement, this ISP, and we've contracted with Haywards, who are our main systems supplier. They can do this, so we've contracted with them, and we are we're making progress in terms of connecting to the system. We've already connected our test service, and we're due to begin the process for connecting the live service in September. So this was originally due to take place in May, but we've requested a delay on that as a later implementation will reduce costs for the funds, but we'll still be able to comply with the 31st of October deadline. So that's the technical requirements. The other main area that we need to be on top of is data improvement. And in February, Hayward's provided a data readiness summary for the fund to give us an idea of where our data quality is strong and any areas that we need to address. And the reports in the appendix, it used a traffic light system to highlight any areas of concern. There weren't any reds on our report. There were some amber areas which are listed within the report. The main area of concern is addresses for our deferred members. So these are members, I think I touched upon this earlier, these are members that paid into the scheme. They left before they're entitled to receive their pension. So at that point, we calculate the value of the pension, we send them a notification of that, and that becomes payable when they reach retirement age. And whilst we ask deferred members to tell us if they change address, so that we can contact them when we need to, in reality, for many members, they don't get round to doing that. So there is an area for improvement with regards to keeping our addresses up to date for those members. And we've started to do that. So we have a tracing services provider that has provided us with some information with regards to latest addresses for members, and we're in the process of contacting those members just to get confirmation that the addresses that we've provided are correct. So where we have where the members have got an online account, we've contacted them through their online account just to get confirmation of that. And then we're starting now to look at the members who don't have online accounts to see the most efficient way of contacting them and getting confirmation of their latest address. So that's a key exercise that's ongoing at the moment. The other area is with relations to members who have got AVCs. So we touched on AVCs earlier. So this is where members can pay additional contributions through Prudential. So if they have an AVC account with Prudential, that information will be sent to us and we'll provide that data to any users of the portal who are looking for their pensions. So to ensure that we can connect the member's AVC account to our accounts, we're doing a reconciliation exercise between Prudential's data and our own, and that's ongoing at the moment, but we'll aim to complete that over the summer. The other area I wanted to highlight was the matching criteria. So when users log on to the dashboards, they'll be asked to provide certain identifiers, so name, date of birth, national insurance number, etc. And to access our records, we will be expecting members to provide national insurance number, surname, date of birth, and postcode. So where that information is provided, then and that matches with our records, then we'll be able to provide that data to members. So we're reasonably confident that the information that we've got is up to date in respect of national insurance number, date of birth and surname. It's just really the postcodes for these deferred members that we're looking to improve where we can. So again, that's something that's ongoing. So that's the initial criteria that we will use for matching. We will review that
once the exercise is live, just to ensure that people are able to connect to their systems correctly and whether there's any room for improvement. And if we look to change the matching criteria, then we'll bring that information to the board. Wanted to let you know about a national testing exercise that is being conducted in 2025. There's 2 phases to this testing exercise. There's been an initial smaller phase that's already begun, focusing on DC schemes and private sector schemes. But a second phase later in the year will cover a larger sample of users. Initially around 200 users in the first few months of testing, but this will scale up to around 11,000 a month. And this testing phase is expected to last 6 to 10 months. So this will be ongoing by the time we've connected to the dashboard. So we will expect to receive some requests for data as part of that exercise. So that will be a useful learning exercise for us, and obviously we'll refine any processes based on what we learn as a result of that exercise. Just to mention, we've got a timeline within the report that covers the various steps that we need to take leading up to the connection at the end of September, and then also the connection point for the live exercise. So once all schemes are connected 31st of October, the dashboard will be expected to go live around that time. It could be before all schemes are connected if testing has gone well and there's, for example, 95% of schemes are on, and the exercise has gone to plan. It's possible that the launch date could be before all schemes are connected in October 2026. We haven't heard what the date is yet, but no doubt we will be nearer the time. That's all I wanted to say really on dashboards. Happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Stuart. Yes, any questions? Mr. Stewart.
Could I just ask about people accessing this, requiring to be access it individually? What's the main difference between the portal that we're in the previous report that you're talking about around locally accessed and then requiring them to access this data? Is there any linkages between the two, or?
There's no direct link, Andrew. This exercise the intention is to connect people with any missing pensions. Obviously, as you say, we've already got an online system that's in place, and people can connect to that. But this will allow users to trace all their systems in one foul swoop, if you like. So a deferred member of the scheme who perhaps left in 1990 has never had any access to our system, as we've lost touch with him. Effectively, he can go onto the system and he'll get informed of all his pension schemes in one foul swoop.
And what's the initial thoughts or plans about linking both systems? Have you thought about that, or is it you're just looking to implement and then think about that as it happens?
Well, at the moment, there'll be more information on our system. Because it's more of a switchboard, that the data is still going to be stored here. It's still going to be stored within the Leicestershire systems. So there's no plans at the moment to align the two. But we'll see how the exercise goes. We'll see what developments the dashboard program make, because this is intended to be a starting point, and they're going to the administrators of the dashboard program will look to develop that over the years. But at the moment, there's no plans to align it.
Thank you.
Can I just also add, thank you, Stuart. This has been raised by quite a few other pension funds as well, Andrew. This exact point, because there's a lot of funds who have had online access, not just in the LGPS, but across multiple pension schemes. So we're all saying, well, is this kind of an additional step that we don't, dare I say, don't need? But it's really being designed by government to capture those people who've lost track with their pensions. And I think, as Stuart then rightly says, then there'll be next step work to actually then connect back to those existing systems. So it feels as though it's a little bit around the wrong way for us, but you're absolutely right in raising that. And there are many funds that are raising the same question. Is that all right? Just to reassure you on that point. Thanks, Stu.
And how are we communicating that to staff? Is it going to be a national campaign, or is that something we're going to have to deliver locally?
Both. So there will be national information about this. It'll be on the news. It'll be newspapers. You know, everywhere will be making a big sort of national sale on this from the government's angle. But for funds as well, we'll have a responsibility to inform people as well. So we'll be including it in things like the state. Our annual benefit statements, be aware if you've lost track of other pensions, here's a way you can help find it. We'll be asking employers too, because what this doesn't do is it doesn't, as a pension fund, Andrew, we don't have access to the non-pensionable members. Are you with me? So like county or police, there's people who are employed by the county and police who aren't in the pension scheme. As a pension fund, we have no access to those members. So we'll also be asking employers to get this message out as well. Are you with me? So there'll be a lot of communication. Is it in a nutshell? Is that all right?
That's really helpful. Thank you.
Cheers. All right. Thanks, Stu.
Thank you. I think, as you say, Ian, I think the importance of the dashboard will increase over time, because what you see now is that employees don't perhaps stay with the same employer for 30 years. They do tend to move around more than perhaps they did historically. So I think, you know, the value of it will come in future years. But my question was around, you know, you mentioned about addresses for people that move on. So if somebody has got multiple pensions and they move house, will they be able to go onto the dashboard and update their address on there, and it feed all of the pension schemes? No.
In terms of that last point, no, it's almost the other way around. So they'll be entering their identifier information. So they'll enter the name, the date of birth, national insurance number. They'll be entering their current address. They'll also be asked to provide any previous addresses as well. Then that information goes out, and that's how we track. That's how the dashboard will track their records down based on that information. But because the dashboard is only a pointer, it'll say, so you've got a pension at Leicestershire. Here's a link. Here's a phone number. If you want to get in touch with them for more information, feel free to do so. So it's pointing them towards it at this stage. So this is probably touches in with Andrew's point almost, that if it was all connected, then maybe there would be a way that you could enter an address, like kind of a tell us once type thing for pensions, maybe, where you could go in and update all records. But that's not on the agenda at the moment.
I'd just like to ask Stuart about paragraph 15 and these undecided leavers, and quite a high number of people have left, but no needs to be identified. I take it those are people that perhaps changing career, perhaps moved out to local government or gone somewhere else, but they're not ready to take their pensions yet.
So yes, we're aware that these people have left. So many of them will have an entitlement to a pension. They'll generally be under 55. And we are in the process of calculating their entitlement and contacting them. So some may have an entitlement to a refund of contributions or the ability to transfer to another scheme. Many of them will have an entitlement to a deferred pension, which isn't due yet.
Any more questions? No? In that case, I'm happy to agree the recommendation at page 158 of the agenda that the board notes all areas of the report. Thanks to the staff for the work involved. I take it that report's noted. Thank you. Our final substantive item then is item 13, risk management and internal controls. Pensions Manager Ian Howe to report, please. Ian.
Thank you, Chair. I won't dwell on this. This is a standard report that comes through to the board and the committee every quarter. It's the standard funds risk register. It's where we manage the risks. Myself, Bhulesh, Kat and other officers meet prior to each meeting to discuss all the risks on the risk register, and we provide an update. I wasn't going to go through them one by one. I didn't think it was necessary, but obviously happy to take any questions on any particular items if there are any.
Well, we've all read the report. Any questions for Ian? No? Not then, we're just asked to note the Risk Management Internal Controls report. Can I take that the report is duly noted? Thank you. Item 14 then. Members are asked to note the dates of future meetings. They're scheduled for the 3rd of September and the 29th of October. That's to be noted. Item 15, are there any other items which the Chairman has decided to take as urgent? And as I said earlier, there are none. On that basis, I'd like to thank everyone for attendance and declare the meeting is closed. Thank you.